Hello, everyone. Welcome to Startup Grind. My name is Lauren Baxter. I'm the director of Startup Grind Phoenix. Tonight, I am very excited to be talking with Alexi Venneri, CEO and co-founder of Digital Airstrike. But before we get started, I do want to give a big shout out virtually to our sponsors, Hool Curry Law and Downtown PHX. We haven't seen you guys in a while. It's been a minute. But we're still rolling, and thank you all for being here. We are recording this, so if for some reason your friends didn't get in, we will have this posted on our Startup Grind YouTube channel at some point soon. But with that, the good news about virtual events is we just get right to it. So thank you, first of all, Alexi, for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I think this is awesome. And I know we'd all love to be together and maybe having dinner and a drink, but now you don't necessarily have to get to your jammies, I guess, if you're at home. So
you guys don't even know what I'm wearing on the bottom.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, so this is fun. Yes. Yeah, mine isn't exciting, but cheers.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
well, we're gonna get started.
Awesome.
We're gonna dig right into it. So thinking back to when you were little, I always like to dig into what people were like in their childhood. What did you want to be when you grew up, or what did you think you wanted to be?
You know, I always knew I wanted to build things. I distinctly remember, I grew up with two brothers, and I remember I didn't like the board games that were given to us, and I created my own board games with my own rules. And sometimes the rules, swayed more creatively towards the way I like to play the games. So I remember doing that. I always loved creating things. Way back in the day, my favorite TV show was something called Kids Are People Too. So I remember being very much about equality, regardless of age or gender. And then I always wanted to have my own business. So I think back then I didn't know what it was, but I did everything, from dog walking to babysitting to always thinking about inventions and things that I could build even back in the day. So, that's where it started. And I always was fascinated with travel. I think my first real career is I thought I would be running some sort of, fabulous resort in Europe at some point. But, it all kind of came back to marketing and ultimately technology. So yeah.
Yeah, and you did not grow up in the US. Tell us about where you grew up.
I was born in Canada, in Ontario, near Toronto, Ontario.
Beautiful.
And but I always kind of felt very, I guess international. My father was from Ireland, and on my mother's side, they were all from Poland. And, we were in the city all the time in Toronto, and, very, very close to the US, as you can imagine. So we got all the, American programs and history. And, I was a little bit of a gypsy. I traveled around a lot. I lived in a lot of different places. I went to school in Alberta. And then I was actually recruited from Victoria, British Columbia down to Seattle by the ferry company. So I've lived in a lot of places. I've been really fortunate.
Absolutely. You have that international bug in you from the start.
Yeah, I do.
So tell me a little bit, did you have any entrepreneurial influences in your family?
I did. I wished I could have met him, definitely. So my father's father was an entrepreneur. He lived, just kind of south of Dublin. And I think his family was farmers, but he himself just became this self-made, for the time, I'm sure a multimillionaire, had a lot of different businesses. He, had retail shops, and, Ireland back in the day was interesting. They didn't allow things like birth control. You couldn't get divorced, but they allowed, drinking and gambling. So he
like it.
had a number of bookie shops. I think at one point he had 17 little bookie shops. And he lived in a small town called Kilkenny, the main town he was in. And the story I always heard about growing up is he was the first person in the town to ever get life insurance. So that was something innovative in the day. But there was a version of like the Kentucky Derby in the UK. And there was only one Irish horse that ever made it into that race. And it was named Lovely Cottage. And it had crazy odds, like 30-1. And, no one thought it would ever do anything in this race. But every Irish, man, probably in the day, and maybe some women, put, every, dollar they had on this horse. And the odds were 30-1. And wouldn't you know that Lovely Cottage won the race? And you can actually Google it. It's, if you look at the Lovely Cottage wins the race, you can see this horse just coming from nowhere. And every other bookie shop pretty much in Ireland closed their doors. They couldn't cover the bets. And my grandfather mortgaged, I think, all of his businesses in his home. And he was the one bookie that paid out. So his name was Rollo Griffin, and he always paid out. And he just, the stories I've heard of him, even as a, a young adult, I visited Ireland, and my family would take me to pubs in these towns, and they'd say I was Rollo Griffin's granddaughter, and they would buy me a drink. I mean, they still knew of his legend of being just a very honest businessman, which I think was really cool. And he was very innovative in his day. He did a lot of different businesses. So I never got to meet him. He passed before I was born, but the stories of him are legendary, and he was apparently a great man and very creative. So I think that's where it started for me. I'm also really lucky. One of my brothers is a great entrepreneur. He's a tech entrepreneur, and he started the company called Pay by Phone. If any of you have seen it in the Bay Area, that's his company. And also Glance Technology, which is all around mobile payments for restaurants, which now is, certainly important, touchless payments. So his name's Desmond Griffin, so I'm really proud of him. So to have two entrepreneurs in the family, pretty unusual, but I think it's somehow those genes go back to my Irish family, I think.
Yeah. And we all know now that if we ever go to Ireland, we're bringing you with us.
I can tell you all the good spots for sure. The good photos. That's right. Yeah.
So your younger dreams of working this gorgeous hotel led you to a degree in tourism, and you got your start in tourism and marketing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. This is going way back. I didn't
this
feel
is
like
only
a
10
travel
years ago.
agent. To go back. It was a Bachelor of Arts, but it was a unique program at the time. And I was really drawn to it because it was about marketing destinations and really just engaging with consumers. And that to me just sounded fantastic. How do we let consumers know about, fantastic ways to spend their money, basically. So that was my degree. It was very interesting. And it really took me to a tourism board. It took me to work for a ferry company, which brought me to the States. And then it really helped me get, probably one of those key jobs when you think back. I was the youngest director of marketing ever hired by the Seattle Mariners. So I was brought on to help them market this destination of this ballpark they were building. And, I was in my young 20s and landed this job, and I was in Seattle, and it was fantastic. So that whole, really creating a ballpark as a tourism destination. So ultimately that tourism degree helped, and you just never know where it goes. But technology really just happened because it was my next door neighbor. He was looking to start a startup, and he said, you know what, I'm going to bring you over. The second that we can afford a marketing budget, we're going to have you come over, and you're going to help us market this new product. And it was, in the time, pretty innovative. It was voice over IP, basically taking toll-free numbers and tracking where your advertising, was generating calls. And as any marketer, it's half the problem is not knowing what works in your budget. So I was just fascinated. You're in Seattle in the hub of technology, and everyone thought I was insane to leave the Seattle Mariners and go to a startup that had, I was the sixth employee. There was nothing. I think my first desk was basically a card table. But it was fascinating. I was really drawn to the technology. So that's where I got hooked.
And just going back to the Mariners, because I think the story is really good for other people to hear. You saw an ad that said, this can be your office. Tell me about your application to that, because I think that just shows a lot about your perseverance.
Sure. Well, again, this is a little low tech for sure, but it was in the newspaper, and they actually just showed a picture of the model of the ballpark they were building. And I even back then, I wasn't like a big, weekend newspaper reader. I don't even know why. I was probably looking at real estate or something to buy, and it just stood out, and it was just so fascinating. And they really pictured it as a destination. And for me, I'm like, wow, if I can, have families come, and it talked about, my job would be, regardless of what the team did on the field, make it an experience. And again, as a marketer, to be able to create an experience for families and to have consumers, connect with something, that just sold me right there. So I applied, and I think there was over 600 people that had applied. And the interview process went on and on. It was group interviews, it was individual interviews. I think it was literally like about 12 rounds. At
Wow.
the end, I'm like, you know what, guys? If
Just
I'm not
pick me
by
already.
now,
Yeah.
right up to the president of the baseball club. So, but it was great, and it was such a learning experience. I mean, I joined right when we were building the ballpark. I didn't know anything about construction. I mean, you had to, learn how to market all aspects of the park. And we opened that year midway through the season, which was crazy. I don't know any teams that switch ballparks these days in the middle of a season. And there were areas of the park that just weren't open. We just lots of crazy stuff. But they said, oh, put the Canadian in charge of ballpark marketing, as well as just make sure we don't get sued. So I also had like sponsor relations to make sure whenever they came to their suites, they were happy. I had guest complaints. Oh, give it to the Canadian, she'll be nice, and
She'll be fine.
yeah, she'll be fine. But it's amazing what you learn. I mean, I think everything I've done in my career really prepared me for starting this business, starting this company, and it was like a startup. I mean, you'd think that a baseball team with a ballpark like that, but the team had never run a ballpark. It was always run by the city. So, they just kind of gave it to all of us, and nobody knew really how to run our own park. So we figured it out on the job, and it's a great facility. So.
And that just leads into my next question, which is, are there anything, before we get to going into the first real startup that you worked at, is there anything from your tourism days and working with the baseball team that you still use today in your company?
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing, the marketing was good. You had to learn your audience, and we did a lot of things at the ballpark. We drew from a big area, certainly. But the thing I remember the most, the stories I remember the most were connecting with the people. And I use that today, I think, with our team and with our clients. One story I remember in particular, the guest complaints. I really learned at a young age just to listen. And that seems maybe tried, and we all get busy in our startups, but there was, I remember a number of examples, but one that comes to mind was a dad that was calling in, and they were irate, and it was the new season, and he was upset because in the prior season his son had left his glove at the ballpark. And we don't keep, lost and found for 6 months, or whatever it was. And he'd made it through levels of people, and he was just getting more and more irate. And I said, I'll talk to him. Let me talk to him. And the thing that broke the ice for him when I got on the phone is I was the first person to ask what his son's name was. And he was just
a little
like,
caring. Yeah.
Right. And I just, I can't imagine how tough that is. I mean, I'm sure he loves his glove, and I'm so sorry for that happening. And, that's heartbreaking. Maybe this gentleman couldn't afford another glove. And I said, I can't bring back that glove, but how about we put together a care package for your son? And just the fact you asked their name and you listened and he was heard, I think it just makes a difference. And whether that's your business partners, your investors, your employees, your clients, remembering just to stop and ask some questions and listen and kind of have that empathy can go a long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you leave anyone else's dream job in baseball.
Yes.
And you are the sixth employee, and you help to grow Look Who's Calling to $75 million.
Yes. Yes.
Now, your friends are probably like, you're going where?
That's exactly what happened.
Tell me
I grew up in a house
about
of
what you were thinking. Like, obviously you saw the opportunity.
Well, ironically, I wasn't really into sports myself. And I did grow up in a household full of brothers, and they played all the sports and, had visions, I'm sure, of actually playing for a major league team. I just always looked at it as a business. I think, once you kind of have that business brand as an entrepreneur, and, I looked at the potential of a startup. I was always so fascinated by entrepreneurs. I loved starting things. I've been told many times in my career that once I fix it, I move on to the next thing, because I'm, when it gets easy, I want to leave. And I don't know that I consciously knew that, but it was just fascinating to me. And I wasn't afraid of taking that risk. I wasn't afraid of taking a risk of getting that job with the baseball team when I didn't even really care about the sport. It's more the destination, how do I market this? And then I was just really intrigued by the technology. It was the tech. Yeah. And I just, I went for it, and it was certainly one of the best things I ever did. I still know people in sports. A lot of them stay their whole careers. For me, I don't know. I didn't need that validation of the big name of a sports team maybe to maybe get me that great dinner reservation. Or for me, I wanted to build something of my own. That wasn't my team. That wasn't, I liked the team. I was part of the team, but it's definitely, I think it's in you. If you're into tech and startups, at some point you just have to go for it. And being in Seattle, the chance to be at the ground floor of a startup was intriguing. This was also kind of the time of, I wouldn't say it was the .com heyday or really the bust either, but it was a time when you kind of knew that, if you were going to ultimately do something, you wanted to go somewhere where you get stock options. And I was, again, one of the first people to ever get stock options in that company. I was the first person. And it was just great to build something. And I'll say to this day, I'm still friends with that original team. We were that original crew. We were in our 20s and we were just figuring things out. And it was just fascinating to learn from that. And we grew to 75 million in just over 4 years. Wow. And we didn't take on big investment. We just were really creative. And that's where we also honed a lot of our marketing, just creative ideas around marketing, because our whole thesis was we help you, know what marketing works. So we were kind of given license to try a lot of crazy things with marketing, and we'd put our own numbers on all of our own campaigns and see what worked. So it was a fun time.
So you became the CMO with that company, and you obviously helped them scale to that.
Yes.
Tell us a little about, because this is new for you. I mean, you went into the baseball, which is a little bit like a startup, but how did you face scaling that fast? And what have you applied to Digital Airstrike from that?
There's so many things.
Let's just do a dissertation.
Ultimately, I ended up writing a book about that experience. We had so many things that just kind of worked and clicked, and it was a lot of hard work and teamwork. But we were all kind of a family. That was probably the biggest thing that we learned. I mean, all of us would roll up our sleeves and do whatever it took. And in fact, that's where we even started an award, the Whatever It Takes award, with our marketing team. And so I wrote a book. People had said, someone should write a book about you guys, what you're doing and how cool this is.
What's your book called?
It's called Balls. It's called Balls. You need balls in business. It's an acronym for being brave, authentic, loud, lovable, and spunky, and how we did grow that company. And we also featured a lot of our clients. And we had some cool clients back in the day we worked with. We worked with Salesforce before they were like a big thing. They're in the book. We had, marquee jet partners. We had just interesting clients. And so I wrote a book. It was right towards the end of that 4 years. And it was great. And actually, any of our team here that reads the book, they're like, oh, that's where you got that idea. Because a lot of things we tried, I mean, if it works, if it's not broken, you don't have to fix it. So some very cool ideas. But to think out of the box, I think there's a chapter that talks about ordering off the menu. Don't be afraid to ask for things. When you're in startup mode, you got to negotiate. Don't be shy. Don't act like you don't know what you're doing. Ask for things, even if you don't know if you can get them. Get creative, negotiate with vendors. Try, guerrilla marketing, grassroots stuff, and then just track it and see if it works, right? We were also very data-driven. I think being data-driven helps. Anytime you're in startup mode, and certainly any successful business, you have to be all over the data. You've got to know cash flow. You've got to know, ROI per employee. If there's, 8 of you, how are you really moving that business forward? So a lot of examples in that book. But I was just asked that earlier today. I think that book now is 16 years old. And this is before social media. I don't believe it. It is. And it's before social media, which is shocking to me. It didn't exist. So we're actually just I'm getting ready to write finally a follow-up book to that. That's going to be published hopefully later this fall. So,
do you have a title?
I do. The working title right now is called Driven. Okay. From recession to pandemic and everything in between.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
It's been fun. But that experience, that startup, once you do that, you're kind of hooked. Once you're part of that crew and that team and you're in it together, and, not all of it's easy. A lot of it's hard, but you just start, seeing that growth and be very nimble and able to pivot. All those things sound cliche, but we had a blast, and it was just a great team. So for sure, the people made it.
So what lured you away? Next
Yeah,
section
the
of your
next
life.
piece. Well, we kind of got known for throwing some pretty big trade show events,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a big believer in go hard or go home. And what we found, at least for us, is we would rather do like one big thing, make a big splash, and give it lots of legs, than do tons of little things all the way through the year. And we were very also vertical specific, so we were able to do that. So there's a big trade show every year, and there's some large companies, and we're primarily an automotive technology company, even though we do other things. And one of the large tech companies in our space that would happen to be out of New York just saw our trade show booth and the lines and the crowds, and I guess they told a recruiter, go find whoever runs marketing. And I got a call, and I'd never heard of the company, and they said, "That's the problem. We're bigger than people know.
This is
Nobody
what we
knows
need you
about
to
us."
solve.
Yeah. And then they said, come to New York. It's a free trip, if nothing else. We just want to meet you. We know what you've done. We've read your book. We want to meet you. So I kind of took it, never thinking I would really want to leave. And what got me was honestly the gentleman, the president at the time, his name's Vince Passion, just the smartest guy I'd ever met. And he blew me away in this interview, and just being around New Yorkers and their energy. And I was just sold. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And I've never been scared of a challenge. And it was pre-IPO. And I'd never taken a company public. So, you've grown that company, that chance to be in New York and doing that. I was sold.
And the company's name is
wasn't a
Dealer
plan
Track.
to leave. That's why I went to Dealer Track. Yeah.
Yeah, Dealer Track. And you mentioned how important it was for you to work around smart people, and I'm sure you recruit a ton of smart people. Why is it so important for other entrepreneurs to be surrounded by smart people?
There's lots of smarts, right? There's street smarts, there's being passionate about things and getting in and being creative in your field. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, we move fast, our brains are thinking a mile a minute, and it's hard to have people that can't keep up. And they can keep up in their lanes, but you really, when you're moving fast in the beginning, you need people to wear 12 hats. And I always wanted to hire for kind of the passion and the energy, and then train on the skills, or train on the vertical subject matter, whatever it might be, but to just get those people that were in it with you, kind of those ride or die folks. That energy, it's the energy that can be contagious, and you can kind of feed off of each other. So I think whenever that you click with somebody and you see that they've done their homework, even if they don't get all the questions right, that to me is really, really important. You need those people that are very driven, like the book title we're going with. I just get excited by that energy, and people that want to be in it with you. They're not just checking a box. They're not just in it for the paycheck. The people that like to create and build, those are the people you want.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so you're working in the automotive industry, yet again, another industry for you. What was it like to work in a male-dominated industry?
Well, I think I mentioned I grew up with all brothers.
Oh, true. Never mind.
So I did grow up with all brothers, so I was kind of used to it. And then sports. I mean, being with the Mariners in baseball, a lot of guys. So I don't know. It's never intimidated me. I think that when you're passionate about something, you look past gender. People might not look past mine, but I certainly do that. And it's the work ethic for me. So it didn't really faze me. I'll tell you what I really like about automotive. So many people that run dealerships, they're entrepreneurs. And again, it keeps going back to that entrepreneurial spirit that when you can work with other people, other startups, right? You have colleagues you can bounce things off of. It is truly amazing once you really see all of the pieces that someone running a dealership has to do. I mean, it is, it's like the original, family run or small business in a lot of communities. And it's not that small. They can have up to 250 employees in one dealership. And they have to know marketing and HR, how to service, not just the vehicles, but people. And the amount of technology in automotive is actually pretty shocking. People aren't really aware of it, but there's compliance. There's a lot of ways now that, you see Carvana, new ways you can automate buying a car. And so I never would have picked automotive per se, but the fact that technology is really embraced a great industry. And as I said, we work with other industries too, but it's so fascinating. And then I think also if you're a creator, the fact that they are coming out with new models and new cars all the time, even if you're not into
everything's
cars.
changing.
Oh, the technology in the cars. I mean, we get to work with Tesla. I mean, we get to, you get to see all these new things, all the electric vehicles that come out. My goodness, it's so exciting. And then just the technology in the cars has really evolved. So I think as a technologist, it's just a cool industry to be in. And there just really are some great innovative companies in the space. So I'm definitely in love with it. It's great, but wasn't my original choice. I've never actually sold a car myself, but I definitely work with some great people that do.
That might be a good challenge for you someday.
Yeah.
So how'd you end up in Arizona?
Well, being in New York, and I'd been known a little bit for writing that book and certainly growing that original startup. One of our original investors.
Oh wait, hold on, I forgot. You helped that company IPO.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that was great. That was crazy, by the way.
Hold on to that next question. How was that? How take me through a little bit of what that was like, because that's a lot of work.
The best part for me, and kudos to that company and the leadership team there, they put me on a team. I'd never done M&A before. And they put me on a team to do M&A, and that was very, very cool. Again, as an entrepreneur, we wanted to acquire a number of companies pre-IPO and then keep that momentum going post-IPO. Kind of insurance policy against, maybe some dips in organic growth. And that was the best part for me, was doing M&A, because it was a challenge. I think we bought, I want to say 9 companies in 5 months.
Wow.
And you had to integrate the brands and the people and the culture. And again, at the time I was running marketing and investor relations, and marketing is always working with HR and everything, which is the way it should be, just like really every department. But just trying to bring those cultures together and come up with that brand. And we were reinventing ourselves as an entity all the time. That was great. So that was the best thing. But then learning, you've got another client now, the analysts and the investment community. And that's a whole nother world. How to build the IR site and how to handle the calls and all the legalities. I spent a lot of time getting to know our legal team. Every piece of marketing had to go through them. But they were great. So that was a learning experience. And again, I just really valued that. So that was very, very cool. It was cool to be on NASDAQ. We got to actually design the digital billboard. When you go public, you have, I think it was 30 minutes where we got the full, I don't know how many feet, it was massive billboard in Times Square to advertise the fact that we went out. So it was very cool. Lots of great experience. Cool. Yeah.
So yet again, Alexi, never one to not accept a challenge. Moving on to Arizona. So tell me. Right.
It was original investor.
Dealer tracks on NASDAQ, and you're like, nope, I'm going to the desert.
Right. It was not in my life plan. I can tell you, I've not really had a career plan, which is kind of bad. I was just given these opportunities, and I was really never afraid to take them.
I think it's working out for you.
Well, it has. But I love New York. New Yorkers are my people. I was originally born, a little more north, but on the East Coast. Yeah. Love the energy, love the drive. Fast talking, and that energy is infectious. So original investor from whose calling days, a local gentleman here who very wealthy, basically showed up on his private jet and challenged me. He said, well, you've helped entrepreneurs. You've written a book about entrepreneurs. When are you going to be one? And man, he's a good salesperson.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You're right. And he's like, when do you want to work for yourself? So he offered me a position to be a business partner in an agency here. And he wanted me to transform it and take it from really a traditional agency. That's where I met Diana. Hey, Diana, she's on the webinar. So way back in the day, and take it to digital. And really, take not just the agency, but clients nationwide into the digital world. And so again, as a marketer and that entrepreneur, I'm like, you know what? You're right. I haven't done that. So I'd never even been to Phoenix, and he was based here, and I just, took the job and made it happen. So
what month did he bring you out?
It was not summer, but it was close. I want to say, it was close. Now that's a great question. I think it was May. It was almost summer. And he was also very accommodating, but I gave dealer track 6 months notice. I so much
Wow.
want to leave them. I remember that. And I said, I got to, we still have a lot to do. I want to take you through the year, the fiscal year. And he allowed it, and they, appreciated it. So my husband and myself and some rescue dogs, we drove out over Christmas. I remember it was the end of the year, and we drove all the way from New York through the snow, and then we arrived, and it was actually Christmas morning. So the weather was great, and it was all good.
So Phoenix is basically your Christmas present.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're getting to where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
In that agency, that brought a very big life change. But before that life change, what did you learn? Because you were almost like an entrepreneur in that agency. It wasn't yours, but it kind of was. What did you learn from that you hadn't been faced with before?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing that helped prepare me for digital airstrike was I didn't have the safety net of an executive team. I was left to run it. I was operating partner. I was a business partner. I was president. And it was like, here you go. I mean, certainly, my business partner and his partners had input, and, there was meetings and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like, run your budget, run your team, make it happen. And we actually didn't even have a budget. It was 100% driven off of commission. And I know some of you, maybe in the advertising space, know, I mean, wow, what a hard business. It's not like Mad Men. Exactly. Although I do remember the best line from that TV show was, the first day you get a client is one day closer to losing them. And, clients can be fickle in advertising, right? And budgets come and go. And even if you have amazing campaigns, I think, what I also learned from that was I was just one piece of the experience in terms of the success. You run a campaign, you set up maybe the digital advertising, but you don't control how people respond to those leads or what happens to that consumer experience. And that was frustrating when, especially I've got the livelihood of our team, running this agency, everyone's trying to pay their mortgage or rent. So it was the first time I really felt kind of that weight on my shoulders. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't change a thing, because he was also, at the time, running the largest automotive dealership group in the country. And that was our target audience. So if you get a chance before you start a business to actually work and learn, really your demographic, your target audience, their business, which is kind of what I was doing, such a great learning experience.
That's a nugget to take away.
Yeah, it was amazing. So that was just, and I really got a lot of empathy then for our clients. And certainly the same kind of clients we have today. And I learned it's not always about the technology. It's not always about that product. It's about how do you solve a problem for them. Yeah. And I think when you're just kind of, I don't want to say on your high horse as a marketer, but you're running campaigns, you've got ads running, you're running events. It's all about your ideas, your campaigns. And to then just really sit in those shoes and go, man, I see how hard their business is. I want to fix something to make their life easier. I want to find solutions and use technology to help them with that. I think it just makes you more flexible, and definitely that empathy helps. And you learn the language too, learning the lingo, really understanding, the business case that you're working in and the problems you're solving. It was such an education. It was like getting a PhD in your clients. So I wouldn't change a thing. It was a great experience.
And then 2008 came, and what happened?
Well, I've been thinking about it a lot more lately with what's going on right now with the pandemic. I've been saying to my team, it was like 2 years of the pandemic, but it was like slowly ripping off that bandage, right? I mean, it was just, things started to crumble, things got harder, and, it didn't all happen at once. Kind of like recently it's happened all at once, right?
Yeah.
So you weren't really sure what was going to happen. And in automotive, what we thought was going to be a big saving grace for the industry was cash for clunkers. But you may recall there was a GM bailout and no one was building cars, but the government was going to give anybody money to, pull in any kind of old vehicle. And then, you would get a mass, I think it was $3,500 of a car or whatever it was. But the dealers had to front the money, and the government took months and months and months. I heard stories of 9 months before they would pay back the businesses. It's kind of like waiting around for maybe payment on a loan, and some of the things went on now. I think lately the government's done a great job of getting those dollars out, but back then it was just crazy. Pair that with people were losing their homes and all the stuff going on in the housing industry and mortgage industry and banking. and everything just kind of crumbled all at once. And it was just, it was slow, and then it just all kind of imploded. It was, for us here, from what I recall, because we had homes here, obviously in the Valley, it was kind of, August to September of '09 is when I felt like it hit. And for me personally, we'd actually had a construction loan. We were going to build a house on a lot. And why I know that timing is the banks were still doing, bridge loans or construction loans. And we had one pre-approved. And the only thing we needed were the drawings from the architect that we just had to turn in, and, we'd get the loan. And I think we were reviewing the last plans. And within a couple days, the bank just shut down. No loan. And we'd already started demo on this old house we were tearing down. So it was a domino effect. And then because the dealerships had no cars, because they sold them all, there was no inventory, and they had no cash because they're waiting on cash for clunkers, to get that rebate back. They just completely stopped advertising. It was actually a mandate, no advertising. And we were 100% funded on ad commissions. So, my business partner said, we're closing the agency. And that was it. The agency was just over, just done. And we had a home that was, torn up, and I didn't have a job. So that was September, October of '09. It was crazy.
And just looking back at your track record, you are obviously an achiever. You are not afraid of things, because I think it's so important for other people to hear this. They may be going through this. What is the thing, because you started Digital Airstrike right after this, but were you ever in a funk, and how did you get yourself out of that funk?
Yeah, I think it wasn't that long. I honestly think it was a couple days. People had heard, or I told people, I think the first thing you got to do, if you ever lose your job or something like that happens to your business, or you have your own startup and it doesn't work, I think letting people know. I mean, I let them know. I'm like, this happened.
I'm available.
And I got calls. I got people like, oh, can you consult? That old boss I had at Dealer Track, he was onto a new venture. And he said, I'm going to hire you to do some consulting and marketing. And I was just suddenly just very, very busy, in a way, pulling together my own consulting business. And I also had already bought a ticket to Vegas, and there was a trade show, and it was in October. And, you sometimes have those moments where you're like, okay, I'm not even really making much income. My husband same husband, but at the time he was making most of his money on commission. And, we're like, we don't know when this commission's coming in. We can't even, get toilets in some of our bathrooms. And it was just a crazy situation. But I said, you know what? I'm going to this conference. I'm going to go by myself. I got a ticket. I'm going to see, I'm just going to take a chance, and talk to some people. And it was amazing. If I wouldn't have done that, we wouldn't have Digital Airstrike, because I went to that conference and talked to a couple of people who turned out to be my co-founders ultimately. And they said, what are you going to do now? And if you could start something, what would you do? And I remember Adam Sims, great guy, great entrepreneur. He's got an amazing story. He'll be in my book. His story is incredible. He just asked me, if you were going to start a business in this recession, what would it be? What do we need? And I just said, you know what? You need something to manage social media. I said, as a marketer, I'm kind of tired of putting up basically, marketing and hoping someone's going to notice. Why don't we go to where the consumers are? And there was social media, but there was no advertising. There weren't even business pages. And I said, this thing's exploding. There's online reviews, there's Yelp, there's Google. How do you manage that? Most businesses don't have the resources to manage that. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have the time. We've got to find a way to build technology to monetize these social networks. And, had a couple more conversations. Ultimately, it was myself and three gentlemen. We all threw in cash, became equal partners, totally bootstrapped. I mean, we each put in 25 grand, 100 grand, that was it. And it was a 25 grand we didn't have. We borrowed from family members. I mean, it was crazy. And we just made it work. But they said, it's you. So I was it was my kitchen table.
Yep.
And I just started figuring out the social networks. We're like, let's just go see what's going on here. How do we monetize this? And a lot of it was just, I kind of go back to that Seattle Mariners experience. It was listening to people. Well, what I found was so many people were leaving reviews, or they were upset, or they had questions, and businesses didn't even know they were out there. This is before monitoring. They didn't know. And I wanted to listen to these consumers. I wanted to help businesses engage with them and get back to them and answer questions. And ultimately, we got some contractors and we built some technology, and we were just figuring it out as we went along. And it was very, very, very bootstrapped, 100%. And I didn't pay myself for months. It was at the time when if you were a college grad, you couldn't get a job. They were lucky to get a job at the mall, or fast food. I mean, there weren't jobs. And I remember thinking, you know what? Going back to smart people, college graduates that are committed, that have got their degree, that know technology. They were the ones on social media, right? And I'm like, I can teach them the other stuff. We'll figure this out together. So, just went out there and started hiring those college graduates. They weren't employees. I said, look, you're going to be a contractor. We're all contractors. I can't give you any benefits. And my biggest commitment in the time was I just wanted to pay them every 2 weeks. And we didn't overhire too fast. It was, as we got a couple more clients, it let me hire a few more people. And I remember all of those first clients. I just remember being so thankful because once we got a couple more, I remember thinking I can give someone else a job and they can pay their rent. Yeah. There was no investment. There's no capital they could raise. It was the worst time of the recession. And, we just figured it out slowly. And it's been really amazing. That's still what I'm most proud of is that team. And some of those team members are still with us today, which is really, really cool. 11 years later now almost.
And meeting other team members and getting married and all the things.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you mentioned that hiring the recent grads, because I'm sure this opportunity might present itself with what we're in right now. Mm-hmm. You couldn't pay them both full benefits. You couldn't even pay yourself, but you gave them the opportunity. And that's what most of them are hungry for. You're still paying them. It might not be full, but you're building it into something. So great tip for other entrepreneurs. So you went from billing 2.4 million in 18 months, to now 33 million. How'd you do that? Did you sleep?
Not a lot. You
had some other life events happen during this too.
That's true too. Well, that's true. When it rains, it pours. There's a little side note there. So right when the company was starting, at that kitchen table at the house that was torn up, my husband and I just had never been blessed with kids. We'd been married for a while. We didn't think we could have them. And I got pregnant. So I was out to here, had a little guy who's amazing. He heard every sales pitch, in my belly. He was in the house when I was pitching. And today he's definitely into technology, which is great. So our son Griffin's amazing. But, you want something done, give it to a busy person. I mean, that's the only thing I can say. You don't know, you just don't know that you couldn't do it. And I think just having that just feeling blessed to be able to build something. And every day there was another client, and every day we did help somebody. I also do distinctly remember, because I'd seen where budgets were before. I saw, where our clients had money and then they were struggling, that if they could spend a little bit with us and have us do some social media organic advertising to get them traffic, to send them those leads that help them keep the lights on. I mean, that sounds cheesy, but we really felt like we were helping people. We're connecting people on social media. And it doesn't sound novel today, but back then, I mean, we created terms like reputation management. No one knew about social media marketing. We called it that. And we were oftentimes engaging with the social networks, telling them how they could adopt features to help businesses. And they didn't even think about the business side. It was all consumer driven. So we got in really early and we're creative. And, I remember early days are oftentimes not those easy times in a startup, right? Where something changes with a partner or the industry and you're like, I just built this code, or I just did this and now it doesn't work. And I remember telling the team, and we'd all kind of be together, I said, remember, every time the social networks change, every time there's a new player, every time there's a new feature, that makes us more valuable. Because that means they need us. And we're now, as we're
great
scaling,
outlook.
Yeah, and I remember we would count every client. We still do it. We send out bullseye notifications. We call it a bullseye every time we add somebody to our client list. And we would celebrate. We would be so happy because we knew we would help them actually spend less in advertising using technology. And we felt like they weren't being ripped off anymore. And I wouldn't say that when I was on more traditional side, I ripped off anybody in the agency, but I just felt like they were overspending. And we can help them drive leads and drive sales for their business and keep their lights on and help them hire people. It's kind of like now we're kind of like all in it together. We're going to beat this thing. We're going to beat this recession. We're going to get out of this. And slowly we did. We just every day got a little creative and found new ways to do things. I remember finally we were like, we need an office, and we couldn't afford any big leases. And here we're in Scottsdale. We're right near Fashion Square, all Class A real estate. And I'm like, oh, we can't afford this. So we looked, and there was the Optima apartments, and the bottom levels were supposed to be retail. Again, I'm having a lot of flashbacks lately. They couldn't get retailers in, and they just had like these open spaces. So I went there and said, hey, can we, rent something? They said, well, we're actually thinking about maybe making executive suites, like a Regis type setup. And we just, because we didn't think we couldn't, we would just rent different little executive suites. And then we rented a whole row of them down a corridor. And we had all of our people in all of these, we packed them in these little offices. And we just got really creative. And it was like we were, even though it wasn't great, it wasn't ideal, it wasn't the best place to work, we were doing it together, and we're building something. And we'd celebrate every new client. And so, every day we were just trying new things, and not everything worked, but we didn't get discouraged, and we moved forward. And, we kept in touch with a lot of people. We always appeared bigger than I think that we were. We weren't going to be intimidated by a big meeting, or why not go after that big client or that big RFP. And we finally landed one. And at the time, we're like, we still hadn't done any fundraising. It was still just that bootstrap, investment that myself and the founders did. We didn't have time. And we did land like that big client, and they wanted us to scale and add, it was like 900 locations in 30 days. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so that original business partner, Adam Sims, said, hey, I'm involved in another company. Why don't you guys, maybe a couple companies he was involved in, why don't you look at maybe a merger? So we did that, and we got to merge with a larger company out of Silicon Valley. And, it was just something we had to do, because when you get those big opportunities, you kind of do whatever it takes to make it happen.
That's what I'm hearing. You always find a way. That's that. And which leads me to, it must be kind of a flashback. Not that this pandemic is like, it's, 2008, this pandemic. Mm-hmm. What has your team been doing, or what have you been doing in response to this?
It is a flashback. I can tell you the second we started hitting, and I think a lot of people's reaction is a panic. I just feel like we've been training for it for 10 years. We started in such a crazy time for us back then, and this is different crazy. It's not the same, but a lot of the same rules applied, where you have to just be laser focused on your business. And we've always been focused on our clients, but I'm like, we have to help the clients right now. We do need to be mindful of expense. We need to, just dig in everywhere we can. But let's take care of people. Let's take care of our employees. Let's take care of our clients. And we just started, offering technology at low cost or no cost. We actually built new features in the last couple of months, because again, that kind of light switch went on. I'm like, when times are tough, you got to get creative. You got to try new things. So we've been helping clients with things that we sort of already had features, but one example of that would be we've had some SMS capability. We've got AI chatbots. And I noticed that there was more of, instead of marketing, there's more of a need to alert consumers to even the rules that pertain to maybe your field. You're a retailer. Are you allowed to be open in the county? And again, we're nationwide, so we deal with lots of, all over, all the states, everywhere. And there's a lot of confusion, and then even if you are doing things, how are you doing it in a sanitized way? How are you, making sure that everyone's got, following the protocol, the 6 feet distancing, and so many things were changing. And again, our original team was like, this is just like in the recession, things were changing daily. There were new rules and new programs and incentives, and financing would change with whether you're buying a car or a home. So I just said, we need to alert people. So we just turned on something now we're calling Power Text and gave it away. We said, any of our clients, anybody that needs this, if you need a way to quickly get text messages out or explain how curbside delivery works, or how you need to schedule appointments now because you only have so much space or you need distancing. And our team's our tech team, our product team just spun that up. It was like the old days, it didn't matter what your job was, you just all hands on deck. And that's been cool to see that we haven't lost that spirit of a startup, even though we're a little bigger now. And just, I got our managers on the line and I said, guys, things are going to change. It's not business as usual.
Yeah.
And what we're going to find is you're going to see who steps up, who maybe steps down, and who's got to step out and get out of our way. And that's everybody. That comes to partners, vendors that you're working with, who's going to help you, who's going to be in it with you, who maybe you can't work with anymore. Clients, we're going to probably lose some clients. They're going to go out of business. How do we figure out who's going to be in it with us? How do we help them grow that can stay afloat? And then our team, you don't like not keeping team members, but we're going to ask them a lot. We're going to help them get there, but not everyone's going to make it at the end of the day. And we can't afford to have people that aren't fully in this with us to move this forward. There was a lot of deja vu, and just being calm, there's so much in the news and the media. And I think because we live in social media as a business for us and all of us daily now, it's just cutting out some of the distractions. I like to go to data. I'm very data driven. I'm like, at the end of the day, look, what's the data telling you? How should we move forward with the data? Let's try some new things for our clients and help them. It may not always work. Let's even help the businesses engage with the consumers because they're fearful. There's a lot of fear right now. And just communicating, listening. How can we be that partner to help those businesses do that with their consumers? And just stay focused on the data and one day at a time. We still don't know where we're going, right? And we're just learning and we're in this together. I do believe that this is going to be truncated. It's not like that 2-year recession. The fact the whole world is going through it, when we had our recession, it was kind of a rolling recession around the world, right? It didn't hit everywhere all at once, even in the States. I remember Phoenix got hit really hard fast because of the housing crisis. And in a way, it's a benefit that everyone's going through it right now. Because,
all together.
We're in it together and people understand. I also remember we gathered the team and we said, what can we do right now? What do we have that's different? And we just created videos, training videos to give to our clients to help them. We've gone out and even, bought things like our own, branded masks and said, we'll give these to our clients. Just trying new things. I mean, we're not in the business of producing, masks, but if we can get some done and send them to clients and, just always just trying to be creative and again, having that empathy because we are really in this together.
Absolutely.
And it's also okay to make mistakes with our team. We're not perfect. No one's perfect. If your heart's in the right place and you're trying, that's what counts. And so it's been really cool to see everyone come together. I'm so proud of our team. The vast majority have stepped up, by the way, which is great. And it's been cool to see people that I had no idea. Wow, that's so great that they'd be willing to do that. Or you see people, an email around the clock. And then I'm worried about, burnout. I'm like, you need some separation here. And you need some balance, but it's been great.
Before we get to Q&A, because we're going to have some Q&A. So if you would like to submit a question, feel free to submit it in the group chat, or you can come off mute in a few minutes and ask it yourself, which I prefer. Give me a break, Lexi, break. What's your top advice for founders? Especially if you're interested in starting something or, and female founders as well.
Probably the biggest advice is kind of embrace your fear, and you're going to be scared and it's okay, and still do it anyway. Every day, I haven't done everything, there's days where I'm like, oh my goodness, how do we do this? What's that next step? But, admit that you don't know and then go find out. And I think just kind of embracing that there is energy in the unknown and trying new things. It's okay to admit you've never done it. So often I think when you're that entrepreneur and you're starting out as a founder, especially if you've never done a startup before, you kind of assume everyone else in the room has done it. And chances are they haven't, or they've made so many mistakes. And I think it's refreshing when someone said, hey, I've never done this before. What does this mean? Or, in a meeting, they're like, I don't understand the difference between, recap versus straight up financing, or whatever the question may be. If you're working with a banker or getting, funding, I think it's okay to be vulnerable. And, it's okay. I think it shows that, the fact that you're willing to ask questions and learn, that's really what people ultimately want when they're going to invest in you and your company. So, kind of embrace the fear and do it anyway. And if you make mistakes, be good with pivoting. We've changed a lot. We've definitely had a lot of mistakes. You know, it's going to happen, and you're going to have to, you know, move through that storm and just stay focused on kind of your end game and trying new things. It's totally okay to fail. It's totally okay to, you know, have that bad month or that bad quarter, to need, you know, whatever you need. And hopefully you've got people in it with you, whether it's your founders or investors. You know, don't be shy. Something that I learned, I think, early on with our board of directors and our investors, I'm probably maybe too open in board meetings, but I want them to know. And I'm like, you know, dudes, we're in this together. Like, here's the situation. Do you have other portfolio companies that have had this? Or what do you think? I don't know.
Make them work for you.
Yeah. I'm like, I want us all to make money together, but I need some help. And I'm always kind of challenging them and asking for help. I mean, this is an investment. It's not just, you know, write a check and never see me again. So I want some help in that regard. And so, you know, it's there's been, you know, good and bad times, but kind of just living through it and learning from it. It's going to happen, everybody. So be vulnerable and take those risks for sure.
Absolutely. Great advice. Great advice. So before we get to questions, I like to do a little rapid fire just so we get to know you as a person, not just Alexi, the achiever and awesome entrepreneur. So sushi or tacos?
That's tough. I'm going to go with tacos, even though I love sushi. I think I'm a taco girl.
Favorite tacos in the Valley?
The Mission. I love the Mission. They're great.
Those are good. Yeah. Favorite app on your phone?
This is going to sound boring, but the one I probably use the most is Facebook. It became kind of the baby book for my son. And I did something, this is cool, this is new on a personal level. You've ever seen those ads where it's called Passbook, where it can like create like a Shutterfly book from your posts? I did that recently, even though I've been on Facebook, you know, more than a decade. It's so cool. It creates this history. And sometimes there's weird thing, I'm not that weird, but you know, there's like a screenshot you post or a photo of like the weather that day, but it ends up in this bound book. And it's an app that you can do through Facebook. I just love that history. I'm a little sentimental.
Yeah.
And it's
you
cool
didn't have to scrapbook it.
No, and I did a book for every year. So I've always done it more not to be out there to like tell everybody my story, but just kind of document it for myself and my family without having to, you know, write my own personal book.
Exactly.
So, pretty cool.
Mac or PC?
Well, I'm a PC girl at work, but I'll tell you, I'm definitely into Apple everywhere else. So I've got an iPhone. I love my iPad. So it's kind of a blend.
Yeah, you do both. Yeah. Favorite vacation spot?
That's easy. I love Italy. We are kind of addicted in our house. We go almost every summer. We would be just coming back last weekend if we could have taken our annual trip. I love Italy. The people are amazing. It's so cool. The food, the fashion, the wine. It's the view. Oh, the history. Oh, don't get me started. Italy for sure.
I'm supposed to be there right now. It's fine. Favorite book other than your own?
I don't read a lot of fiction. So business books that have helped us in my life, I think, you know, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, if you guys haven't used that in business, I keep referencing it. We keep going back to it. It's a great book. I've always liked, you know, the ones like Good to Great are really good too. Kind of how do you cross that, you know, chasm, and then also like just being, or the chasm being focused that hedgehog. You know, again, thinking to other entrepreneurs, it's true. I mean, know what you can be good at and get great at it, and kind of stay focused. It is hard to say no in business. That's the hardest thing, and I'm still learning that sometimes. But I think those have helped me, like daily. We still kind of reference them here at Digital Strength.
And I'll ask one more. One thing on your bucket list.
Probably, I've always wanted to write a screenplay and maybe not act. I don't want to act in it, but I want to maybe direct and produce it. So I've got some ideas, and if maybe one day I'm living in Italy, I can finally write that movie that I wanted to write. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. Wow. Thank you so much. I loved hearing your story. Let's
I
see, do we have
appreciate
any
it.
questions from our audience? If you want to just come off mute, and if you can't, just let me know. I think I have it where we can come off mute. Anybody have a question? If you want to just pop your name in, I'll put you off mute.
I recognize some names. Come on, everybody. They already know me.
Oh, there we go. Let's see.
Getting a couple.
We're gonna unmute. All right.
Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Hi.
Hi, Ruth. Thanks for coming.
Hey, hey
I
thanks,
like
Lauren.
your background.
Thank you.
That is fun.
Yeah, it's yeah, you know, we had to make do, so we didn't have a nice office yet, so we had to just kind of make one ourselves,
Love it.
design one ourselves. But no, Alexi, so I'm actually based out of here as well. I
Great.
actually have a few friends that do work for you, so
Oh, cool.
that's there.
Work with me.
Work with you, yes, work
Yeah.
with you. But no, you know, it's crazy, like the stories just match up so much, you know, so I was relating to everything you mentioned. For us, we actually started our firm. There's like marketing, tech consulting, and like, you know, things related to like advanced attribution and things like that for Facebook ads. And so me and my team used to all work for Facebook back in the day. So,
Oh, awesome.
so we, you know, we had started out and, you know, just on a shoestring budget, and we had actually won business with startups and things of that nature. And then the pandemic hit. So although we went into these, you know, RFPs, won some of those. And then, you know, all of a sudden all the contracts we signed went on pause. So, you know, we've been trying to emerge from there. But you know what, the good thing that happened out of that is we were able to kind of buckle down and dedicate more of that time towards dev work and more time towards actually like increasing our capabilities to even say that, okay, if we're really good at these things, what are the other like tech or even like creative skills, right? In terms of like our copywriting skills and things of that nature that we need to like enhance to strengthen the main thing that we're good at with that. And so,
That's
but
great.
you know, one thing that we were able to succeed on when we were initially closing that business was just our enthusiasm and just kind of like, you know, our prowess with the things that we were good at. So when we'd write our proposals, we'd literally like lay out the entire strategy that we were going to do for clients. And they were like, well, you guys are transparent. We kind of like the way you guys are going. But, you know, it's one of those things with like the size, since we're so new, is in terms of closing like or getting those meetings with like more type of clients that we would want as well in terms of people who are at a higher scale or higher size. And so there, that's one thing I'd love to ask you, like, you know, when you started out with Digital Airstrike and, you know, it was just coming off of 2008 and so there, what kind of advice would you give for like when you're getting into the field with all these other established people, you know, like in the industry? And so how has it been to like, you know, differentiate yourself and also being attractive to like the clients, the type of clients you want to do business with?
That's a great question. I can tell you, we did a lot of things. So first of all, don't be afraid to cash in on your past experience. I would be name dropping that you were at Facebook all over the place. You know, because sometimes when you're kind of trying to crack into something, there's the established larger companies. Some of those clients want the energetic, creative, you know, smaller boutique option. So I wouldn't shy away from that, but I talk about it. I'm like, hey, we can't talk about your background. Definitely. Usually a lot of people aren't used to doing that, but I would use it, you know, talk about that. And I would focus on the fact that you are smaller without maybe giving away how small, and that you can give them more attention, you're more creative. And then in your follow-up, show that. So whatever your value prop is, I know something we did, lots of examples we did, and nothing was too crazy, but we would rather reach the 10 right people as prospects than to go out to, let's say, you know, 10,000. One year I remember we did something where we're very much into giving back and being charitable and being creative, and we were trying to get our foot in the door. So we had an idea to buy pairs of shoes, and we shipped one running shoe, and we found the top contact that was going to be the one at that big client that we wanted to land. And we would send them this shoe. I've got our head of marketing here. She's like having flashbacks to this. It was a nightmare to execute, but it was a really good idea. And we sent one shoe, and we enclosed a return envelope. But we said, you know, we want to get our foot in the door. We know we're getting our foot in the door. You've never worked with us, you don't know us. And this is what we're going to do. If you just take a call, we want a meeting. We just don't want an email. We want like, now would be maybe a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting. We are going to, well, first of all, we're going to donate. Send us back that shoe. We're going to donate it to a veteran, I think is what we were doing, or one of the charities. And we'll donate in your name there was some other catch to it. But thank you for letting us get the foot there. That's all we wanted. And these shoes, people were like, what? Because it was dimensional. It stood out. We made it be signed by the decision maker. Like you could just, throw it on a reception's desk. So you got to be creative like that. And we were like, we are the new kids on the block. We're creative and you want to work with us. And to this day, sometimes I go to conferences and people will bring up that shoe campaign. And I kind of forget we did it. Our marketing department didn't, because they would get all these shoes coming back and they were like different sizes and one left, one right. They were trying to match it up. We did donate all the shoes. But some of those things you just, go with what you got. Don't be intimidated by those larger companies. Come talk to us. I want to know what you're doing. I love entrepreneurs and I would work it. I would be all about, why you started the company and you and your founders and just your vision. And sometimes they're really open to kind of that scrappy startup mentality. You never know. So just don't be afraid to put that out there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice. Good question too. Anyone else have a question? Everyone's hungry.
I know. We need to send everybody some Uber Eats or something.
That would be amazing. Okay.
Next time.
Yeah. And by the way, I am working on some networking things so we can actually network as well and actually talk to each other too. Yeah. Well, if there's no other questions, I'll ask my last one. Okay. Do you collect anything? Just kind of wanted to know that.
I do. Probably two things. One is probably real estate. It is my side hustle.
I was just going to ask about your side hustle too.
Yeah, I love finding things and making them better. So I tend to like to buy properties and just beautify them. And I can just see it. The second I see something, I know how to fix it. I know how to take down a wall, and I love to just, make it better. I love real estate. So that would be one. And then my other thing I collect, is probably rescue dogs. I just have a soft spot for rescuing animals. And a couple of years ago through Facebook, thank you again, Facebook, we learned about an organization called Beagle Freedom Project. And I'd had beagles, I didn't know anything about it. And it turns out that laboratories use beagles in this country to do experiments on. And a lot of it's just more household chemicals and things that aren't really saving the world at all. And this organization is trying to get these dogs adopted after they've been tested on. So right now we have 4 of them in our house, and they're amazing. Oh, wow. And it's just great to see their evolution. It's again, kind of like, building something. It's small and it's maybe a little broken, and then you see them flourish and grow and learn how to be dogs. It's amazing. So Beagle Freedom Project, check them out. They're doing amazing things. And ultimately, it actually is involved in technology. They're trying to show that if we actually use more technology in research, not these old school medieval ways of testing, we would actually find more cures. And there's not always money in the cure, but it might help the world. And you want to look for a silver lining with this pandemic. I think that it's going to move us forward light years. I mean, countries working together, hopefully. The fact that so many great minds are focused on this. Ultimately, I think it's going to make us healthier, maybe help with other diseases, and we'll learn about new things, and really the spotlight's on it, and hopefully more countries and people and scientists will work together, and technologists. So there's a lot that could be done there. So that's also the thing that I collect with my husband, Dave, and my son, Griffin, a rescue beagle. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Alexi, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking your time. And for anyone that missed this, I will be putting the recording up, and I know it's going to be a great resource for future entrepreneurs in Arizona. So we wish you and your team all the health and wellness, and same to everyone in Phoenix. And if you're joining us from outside, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you in future. future networking events in person.
We gotta when we can plan it. We'll have masks. We'll figure it out. We can do something. We'll make it work. But I do want to thank everybody for joining us. And honestly, if you have anything else you want to reach out to us, if we can help, just come. My email's on the website. I've also always been very open. My cell number has always been on my email signature. If I can help anybody else, we're all in this together. And I think that's also a big thing. You put it out there and see where it goes, and it usually comes back to you too. So. We're very thankful, and we're thankful we're all healthy here at Digital Airstrike. Hopefully you are too. And if there's anything we can do, we're actually announcing, even if there's some job seekers in the mix, I believe there's a press release going out tomorrow. We're giving away some of our technology to help. There's businesses, but also job seekers can use our video technology to stand out from the pack if you're looking for work. So, we're here to help. Any questions, let us know. We definitely are here in it with all the entrepreneurs locally, and we want to help you.
And I'll be sending a follow-up email with a little gift from Digital Airstrike. So thanks for signing up, everybody. All right, Alexi and
Thanks,
team,
everybody.
thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Stay healthy. Bye.